Hello, hello, hello.
Good
Anybody
night.
there?
Good night. You're real.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
I noticed only four of you are with us so far, so I've been hanging around waiting for your colleagues to speed in from work and sign up. So let's give them a few more minutes to settle down so that at least we have a quorum and then we can get started. In the meantime, I'll
problem.
put my contacts up so that you can make a note of them. Can everybody see that?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Just make a note of that information. I'll leave it there for a few minutes. Hopefully the others will join us very shortly. Where is everybody? Does anybody know?
No, how many people are supposed to be in the class?
There are supposed to be at least 10 to 12 persons.
I don't know. I think maybe they're trying to get home. That's the only thing I could
Traffic, perhaps, yes?
Yeah, traffic. But isn't the class recorded?
It is. But usually on the first night of classes when we do a little bit of housekeeping, we do a little bit of chit chatting, we catch up on who's who. That's usually the first night's events. And then so that everybody ends up on the same page. Sometimes persons don't get the recording, they don't hear that the examination dates are, they don't hear that the schedules are, they don't get all kinds of weird things happen. So I usually like to do that stuff on the first day so that when we get started with all the other crazy stuff, we'll be okay. Did you guys get the notes from Miguel?
Um, yes, I got it.
Okay. Yeah, which is one of the other things, making sure everybody's gotten the information. That's not all of it, by the way. I'm sorry, but you're gonna have something of a busy semester, but that's okay. I've tried to make the information as fundamental as possible so you don't get bogged down in a lot of jargon and verbosity, we call it, such that you can actually enjoy reading some of it and even remembering some of it. Okay, so I've kept it as fundamental as possible to make your life as easy as possible. So that's the notes
How
that
many
you
weeks
have.
is the class? How many weeks is it?
The class itself is 12 weeks. Okay. Um, yeah, this is what we mean by housekeeping. The class itself is 12 weeks. We're going to have 2 examinations this semester. You're going to have a midterm exam and a final exam. The midterm exam will be based on the first 5 modules, and the final exam will be based on the remaining 5 modules, which you will get very soon. Grades will be allocated 40-40 for midterm and final, 10% coming in class and getting involved. I like to reward for being present and being actively involved in any discussions that come up, never a bad idea. And then the other 10% will be for a case study, which I shall assign, if not today, next class.
Okay, understood.
Only one problem. I'll have to say all that again. Because folks oftentimes don't go back to the recording, or they don't do it in time, or they don't go to the section to hear that stuff, and then they get stuck and say, well, I didn't know, did you say, nobody told me, and so on. But yeah, that's basically what your semester will look like. Auditing in itself is not the most exciting course in the world, but we can make it far more interesting than people say it is, because it is in fact an interesting class, an interesting process. Without our auditors, all hell will break loose. In fact, hell is breaking loose with auditors, in case you didn't notice. In fact, hell is breaking loose with some of the auditors who are being audited by auditors, because some of the auditors themselves are acting unashamedly unethically for some strange reason. And so you'll notice later on that one of your modules has to do with professional ethics. In auditing, of course, we need professional ethics in anything we do, but certainly it applies to the auditing process as well, in particular, because we, in the business world, in the finance world, in the government world, in the world in general, we put a lot of confidence in what our auditors say. We believe they're supposed to be independent in their work. They're not supposed to be persuaded or dissuaded by anyone and getting their jobs done. People shouldn't be able to bribe them to lie and come up with misinformation with regards to the audits, etc. Fortunately, a lot of these things have happened, but they shouldn't. Not everybody's guilty, but unfortunately, it only takes one guilty party, and then everybody gets looked at funny. So our auditors are definitely under the gun, both external and internal auditors. And we'll be talking about both categories along the way. But certainly both internal and external auditors have the responsibility of making sure that they do their work completely, that they apply the audit techniques that they've learned and the experiences, and when they make their reports to management, to government, to the church, whomever, to the Pope even, on it, whoever they're doing auditing for, that whatever they say is believable and correct to the greatest possible extent. Okay? So welcome to the world of auditing. You will find that you do not have to be a professional auditor in order to appreciate the importance of auditing, which is one of the main reasons why we're doing this course at BIFS, because for many persons who are auditors, sometimes they sign up for and do it as a refresher. You get a different perspective to see what else is going on out there. And then many other persons who are not auditors, they are managers and supervisors and CEOs and all these kinds of persons, compliance officers, whatever the case might be. They get involved in classes like this so that they can get some ideas exactly about how they should conduct certain aspects of their work if they're involved in audit compliance, etc., or if they're in management and supervision, etc., to see how to oversee their people and to understand the language of the auditors when they come in. So whatever your perspective is, there's something in the auditing program that will be helpful to you if you're really, really interested. Okay? And a whole lot of interesting stuff to carry around to help you get your jobs done, whatever job that might be. Okay? For sure. Hospital.
Thank you.
Sorry?
No, I just was saying thank you for the information.
Indeed. And there's much more to come, as you'll see. And you'll find yourselves, if you are diligent enough, applying a lot of these things to a whole lot of things that's going on in your personal and professional life. Once upon a time, persons thought that, that dirty word auditing was just for auditors to speak, to be aware of, to be using, etc. You'll find that that is not true. You don't have to be a professional auditor to maximize auditing concepts, for sure. Particularly those persons who are in management, supervisory, and board level jobs, by all means. So other times, persons who are non-accountants and non-auditors don't understand what auditors are talking about to some great extent, even at the board level. And unfortunately, as a result of that, they find themselves being very ineffective if there's not an audit committee on the board who's appraising them. And oftentimes, when the audit committee is appraising them, they still have no idea what the heck they're talking about anyway. So it's always a good idea to take a moment. And I've been telling members of boards that I've been training for years and years and years that an audit course is something they should do. They don't want to do it. They don't want to commit the time to it. They want to do a 1-hour course so they could get back to the business of whatever they do, not really understanding how important the information can be to them at the board level. So hopefully more organizations will see the wisdom, and if they can't get their board members to do a semester, maybe they can get them to do a 2-day session, God forbid, to get some information that will be very, very helpful to the organization, for sure. All right. Any questions so far? Okay, wonderful. Well, as you've seen, we're going to get started. We have a quorum. We have 5 or 6 persons. We're going to get cracking one way or the other. Whoever's coming will have to catch us up somewhere. Another bit of housekeeping. The notes that you were given today, please feel free to read ahead. Uh, I'll put you on notice now. I'll be yapping from time to time, but I won't be the only one yapping in this class. I expect that you will jump in from time to time, give your views, your opinions, raise questions. If you have any issues whatsoever, let's talk about them as a group. You might help your colleagues along the way. If there are any work experiences that you'd like to bring into the discussion, please feel free. That's the whole idea. At the end of the day, you want to pass your course, but that's not the only objective. The other objectives are to be as interactive as possible and to share with each other as many experiences as you can, past or present, or potential, so that when you're done with this thing, you're done with a pretty well-rounded position rather than just a purely academic situation. All right. So feel free. I don't have any formalities in my audit class. We just talk, I lecture, we discuss, we raise issues, we even argue from every now and then certain points. So feel free to do that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. All right, as you've seen, did everybody get my information that I had on screen? Yes?
Yes.
Perfect. So you know that my name is Samuel Wilkinson. I've been with BIF since forever. And a day and another day. And therefore, I have some idea not only of what's going on with BIFs, former treasurer of BIFs, former council member at BIFs. I've been around BIFs for a long time. BIFs is not the only place I've taught there. I've taught most of the tertiary institutions in the Bahamas, the old College of the Bahamas for about 25 years. And quite a number, Nova, South, and East University, and so on. So I've taught at quite a few institutions in and around the Bahamas and even outside the Bahamas. Are there any persons in this class who are members of STEP? No?
No.
Members of any other professional association?
Well, I'm at the
NCA?
Bahamas Law Enforcement Credit Union.
Oh, yes, okay. My, the police. Are you a police officer?
No, I am not.
Okay. So thank God you're a civilian. And the reason why I say thank God you're a civilian is because the police are a unique group of animals, and they have to be because of that crazy job they have. And
You
so
are
they're
so
the
right.
police. Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely crazy. I'm so happy for them, but I certainly wouldn't volunteer for that job if I didn't have to. But I do thank God for every one of them, crazy as some of them are sometimes, for taking on that responsibility so I can drive home and do something more civil and more sane than dealing with the madness out there. So yeah, hats off to them. All right. So yeah, I've been with this for a long time. Please take note of my email address and my cell number. I'm always checking my email, so feel free to send me an email whenever you wish on any matters as we go through. If you need to touch base by phone or text, you can do that. I tend to be available most of the time, so feel free. It would be very unusual if you send me an email or text and I don't answer within 24 hours. That would be unusual. If I don't answer in 24 hours, call the police. Something has probably happened. Okay? So I usually respond as quickly as I can, even though I have so many other crazy things going. All right. So what's next on my hit list? We spoke about the examinations. Yeah, there'll be 2 of them. The course is 12 weeks. So there'll be 10 weeks of lectures and 2 weeks of exams, which will make up our entire semester. We're going to attempt to cover at least 1 module per week. That could overlap depending on, because some of the modules are a little longer than the others. So, but the average The average cover will be one module per week, give or take. That is not necessarily hard and fast because we might have discussions in there. We might have other things going on. Some things might take a little bit longer than others, but that's the goal. If I remember correctly, the passing grade for this course is 70%, which should be no problem for anybody in this class. That's a hell of a presumption, but I presume anyway. The examinations will not be cumulative, meaning once you've done your midterm, your final exam will not include information from your previous exam. And so they will be non-cumulative. When you're done, you're done. Your case study will have the entire semester to finish it once I assign it next week, I think. But if you finish it before the end of the semester, feel free to submit it by all means. Whatever you do, don't wait until the last minute to start the case. All right. Any questions so far before we go any further about anything?
In reference to the case study, what exactly are we going to be doing with that?
The case study. Let's see. Let me pull it up here for a moment. Find it. Okay, I'll just give you a little preface, warm you up for when I send it to you next week. It's a case study that was prepared a couple of years ago by PwC. Anybody knows who they are? PwC.
PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Correct. PricewaterhouseCoopers is one of the big four auditing companies around the world. And they prepared this case study a couple of years back for anybody who was interested. It's about understanding a financial statement audit. And the reason why I picked this particular one because it covers some very interesting concepts in a language that is actually understandable to some extent, even to something of a layperson, not necessarily all of it, but that's okay. I think it's written up in a way that you'll be able to understand it sufficiently. And even if you get stuck, that's why you have a lecturer to get you unstuck. Okay, so don't worry about it. Don't panic at all. It gives an overview of an audit situation, talks about a scenario that went on in a particular firm, what happened in the audit environment, the kind of steps the auditors took to deal with the situation, the auditor's opinion about whether or not the company is in good standing. All of that will come up in your reading. You'll see examples of the audit report, the audit process. Gives a whole lot of stuff we're going to be talking about this semester in a very practical, real-world situation, which is what I liked about it. Even talks a little bit about fraud and how difficult or easy it is for auditors to discover fraud. It's not always as easy as we think. A lot of people think that once the auditors come in, they'll detect all the fraud in the firm. That is absolutely not true. And auditors will never guarantee in their report that they will detect all the fraud that is occurring in the firm. Because some frauds are so bloody fraudy, for want of a better word. Persons in certain organizations are masters at hiding information, covering it up, switching things around in financial statements, top management people colluding, and especially with collusion, as you'll see in our discussions this semester. Collusion is a very difficult thing to get around unless something, you're very specific, you're very sharp at what you do, you have some luck, you do some serious deep diving and digging. Anybody knows what collusion is? What is collusion?
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah. Collusion is when two or more people get together and plan to defraud the company or a company or entity of their assets. So if two persons are responsible for counting cash in the fine chute, that money that come in at night in the night deposit, the reason why there are two people is so that one person wouldn't sneak some of the money or say that it wasn't there. So the two people are there to verify the deposit. Because if there's one person can come up with all kinds of sneaky stuff. The belief is that there are two or more persons, then it's harder for somebody to get away with theft. However, sometimes the two persons get so friendly or so something together that they decide together to steal or defraud. And whenever two or more people decide together, that action is referred to as collusion. And depending on the nature of the collusion, it's very hard to detect, unfortunately. So that's an interesting word in case somebody comes to you one day and say, let's do this together. And then you remember, my God, the thing I did that auditing class, Mr. Wilkinson said that this was collusion. And usually when people collude, they are not colluding to do anything good. Of course, you can collude to do good, but to do good, you don't have to collude. You can just do good. Usually people collude to do something illegal, unethical, wrong. And so, yes, that's a good word to remember. When auditors come into your firm to audit where you work, whether or not they discuss the issue of collusion much doesn't mean that it's not in their minds. Any experienced set of auditors will know that whenever they come into a firm to audit that firm, there's always a possibility that they will run into collusion. Will they detect every case? Not necessarily. It's depending on how well that collusion is set up. They may never discover it, or it may not be discovered for years, or ever. Some people actually have gotten away, literally with murder, fraud. So yeah, that's kind of all the things the case will be looking at, giving you a really comprehensive perspective on what goes on in the real world of auditing with regards to an actual financial statement audit. In terms of my questions, etc., that I have for you, it's just kind of asking you to go into the case study, do a summary, make some evaluations about what went on in the audit, and give some feedback on what your thoughts were with regards to the audit process. And again, I would encourage you to, of course, wait for a couple of weeks before you start answering the question so that you can get some material under your belt before you get started. Okay, and that will be very helpful for you along the way. So not to worry. By the time you get to doing it, you'll have enough information to work with, and certainly you have me and you have Google and you have your notes. You have a whole lot of things to help you with your case study. Okay. Did that help at all? Or that just like, God.
Oh, yes, it does. It helps. It helps.
Okay. Whatever you do, don't panic. No need. It'll all come together eventually. And again, if you get stuck anywhere for whatever reason, don't stay stuck. That's why I'm here, so that you can raise any questions that you would like to raise at any time. Okay? All right. So the next most important thing, and that is finding out who I'm talking to. So let's see who's here with us tonight. Danelle, are you there? Danelle Brennan.
Yes, I am.
Okay, wonderful, Danielle. Introduce yourself to me and your colleagues. Tell me, us anything you feel like, including why are you doing this class?
Um, as mentioned, I'm Dana Brennan. I'm currently employed with Sunshine Insurance. I'm the Senior Credit and Collections Officer. Um, I've been there for about 5 years. And prior to that, I was in banking for about 12 years.
Okay.
Pardon me?
Indeed. Why did you leave banking?
Well, it was for more growth opportunities in terms of, well, I was at Bank of the Bahamas at that time, and it just seemed as though the ship was sinking at that time. And so they weren't offering me certain opportunities. And so I decided to move into insurance. It's not that much different from banking, to be honest. It's still in the financial services industry.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Um, no, your point is well taken. There was a time when Bob was really looking really shaky. Bob is still a little shaky, but they say that they're a little less shaky than before. So I suspect that means that they're trying to get their act together. Um, Hopefully one day they will get it together. I'm not exactly sure when that will be, but we need Bank of the Bahamas to be successful, um, just like we needed Commonwealth Bank to be successful, and they've done that without any doubt. Can Bank of the Bahamas be as successful? Of course. There are just some things that they have to have the will to do, and I suspect they're still working on those things. God forbid. So I get your point completely, Dana, as to the blah blah blah. So you do auditing because
I'm doing this course because there seems to be a shift in the insurance industry in terms of auditing. They seem to be taking it a little bit more seriously. And it was recommended by the president for me to go ahead and take this course. And so that's why I'm here.
excellent, excellent. Um, Especially when it comes from somebody at the president's level, that's always a good idea. Which means now that you're under the gun, you have to what?
I have to pass.
Exactly. I'm so sorry, but that's just the way this crazy life is.
Yes.
When you're done, that's going to be the first question he or she will want to know. Did you?
Pass.
And if you do not pass this course, I wouldn't want to be the one anywhere near your environments. Okay. So
Yes.
good luck, and I'm sure you'll be fine. Just
Thank you.
stick with it. All right. Elvis Bullet, are you there? Guys never show up on the first night for some reason. I don't know, it's crazy. Okay, India Cartwright.
Present.
Hello, India.
Hi.
That's an interesting name.
Yes.
Did you ask your parents why they named you India?
Yes, my daddy says I'm named after the singer, but my mommy said she found my name in a book. So,
Yeah, parents do the darndest things, don't we?
yes.
As you'll see, are you a mom yet?
No, not as yet.
Okay, so you'll see, God forbid, where you'll get your child's name from. But we shall see. Okay, India, introduce yourself.
My name is India Cartwright, and I'm employed at the Bank of the Bahamas.
That bank, okay.
And the reason I'm taking this course is because I am new to banking and I want to learn more about the field. And also it was recommended by a few of my co-workers that I check out the school and take up a course that interests me, and auditing is that.
It's interesting you picked auditing of all the courses that are offered at BIFS. The truth of the matter is, though, once you get the hang of it and understand what auditing is all about and what it entails, you'll discover soon enough that you made the right decision. Just keep an open mind and learn as much as you can. Auditing is supposed to help to make you a little more inquisitive than you were before, to make you more alert than you may have been before. Whenever you have discussions with your company's external auditors or internal auditors in the future, you will be a little more knowledgeable than some people around you as to what they are talking about, and you may even be able to engage them, see, and ask them questions, because now you have information, or you will by the time this whole crazy thing is over. Okay, so good decision, India.
Yes.
Whatever you do, stay away from Pakistan,
LOL.
because in the real world, India and Pakistan, those two countries, they have always been at war with each other for some reason. Do not name your child Pakistan.
No,
All right, way to go. Welcome aboard.
thank you.
Okay, Alexandria, Pista. Gretchen Ferguson, are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Gretchen. Introduce yourself to us.
Hi, good evening. My name is Gretchen Ferguson. I think I know India. India and I used to work together at BOB.
My, it's a small world.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's
Okay,
a small
so,
world after all, yes.
right, so I've been in banking for a number of years, over 10, 12 years. I'm more interested in compliance. I already did the intermediate level on for AML and compliance. So I hope to start the ICA course in January. However, I know audit is good to compile along with compliance. So I decided to take the auditing class.
Very good.
Also, I work at Water and Sewage now. I work with the IC Internal Control and Compliance Department, and they do a lot of auditing. So I work along with the auditors, but I do some small auditing. So it would be good for me to know it more in depth.
Definitely, for two reasons now. Because you're working with some of it, you'll be working with more of it. And when they find out you know more of it, God knows what else is going to happen. And if you ever end up in compliance, all audit can do is make you a better compliance officer. Okay.
Correct.
So you are definitely on the right track.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. How long have you been at Water and Sewage?
Well, I just started in February
Okay, so you're the new kid on the block.
at Water and Sewage, yeah, but I recently left BOB and I transitioned there.
So they allowed you to leave? They didn't try to keep you?
Perhaps they did, but I most of my banking years at RBC.
Oh, back in the day.
Right, so I have that solid foundation in terms of a lot of banking stuff.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so at the end of the day, water and sewage ends up with the prize, and hopefully they'll put that to work to the greatest possible benefit.
Right, thank you. Okay.
By all means. All right, welcome aboard. Rosalie Monroe.
That's me. I'm here.
Hey, Rosalie, introduce yourself. Tell us what's going on.
Okay, I have my baby here, so if you hear him talking, please excuse him. But yes, I took this course because we are trying to develop a succession plan at the Bahamas Law Enforcement Credit Union. So they want me to start to shadow our internal auditor. So that's why they put me inside this class. So I've been reading the internal audit manual and trying to learn as much as I could.
Excellent. You're definitely in the right place.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, good luck with all this crazy stuff you're going to be doing this semester, and it will be of a major benefit to you for sure. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Good stuff. So is your baby a boy or girl?
He is a boy. I just recently found out he was autistic just a few days ago. So, I'm trying to take everything in, taking this new position that they want to offer me, taking this new news that I'm receiving from him all at the same time. So, trying to make the best of all of it.
Rosalie, when
Pardon me?
when it rains, it truly pours.
Yes, sir.
So here you are, taking on a new responsibility zone, taking on a new course in audit, and taking on news that you're gonna have to be an especially much more dynamic mom than most other moms in the world. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Because autistic children are very special. Okay? I'm sure you'll find all that out eventually. And let me say this, a lot of people, in my experience, when they have children who are autistic, they panic, they run, they jump in the water or something, start swimming to nowhere, especially fathers and all this kind of crazy stuff. For some strange reason. I mean, I get the reason they try to give, but that's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. All you need to do is make sure that whatever opportunities are available for your son, that he gets them.
Yes, sir.
And once he gets them, he is going to do amazing things for sure. Okay? Just make sure he gets them, whatever the hell it is. Whatever
I
mark,
will.
whoever you have to hit with a conch shell, I don't care. Just make sure he gets it. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And you'll be fine, and so will he.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Way to go. Welcome aboard. Shakira. Here's planning for next week, I imagine. Ebony.
Hi, good evening.
Ebony, there you are.
Yes, sir.
Ebony, introduce yourself.
Um, Ebony Knowles is the name, and I work at Advantage Insurance. I've been there for the last 5 years and been in the insurance industry for the last 16 years or so. Accounting, auditing has always been an interest of mine, but as mentioned earlier by, I think, Daynell, with the shift in the insurance industry now and the requirements by the insurance commission, auditing is seems to be moving in a different direction, and I'm trying to take full advantage of this opportunity so that I can help and assist my company in growth in that area. So
No
that
question
was,
about it. No question.
pardon?
No question about it. You're definitely in the right place for sure. Auditing has always been important, but often, all too often, persons thought it was just for the external auditors. See? Those guys who come in and check the financial records. But truth be told, it's not just for them. It's for many, many other kinds of persons in many, many kinds of positions, from compliance to supervisory to senior management to risk, whatever those areas are.
Right.
Auditing information, techniques, directions, directives, processes can always be a huge factor in helping you to get your job done effectively. Not to mention when the quote unquote real auditors come in, when they sit down and say stuff, you understand, oh yeah, I know what the hell you're talking about now. Last year I didn't know, but I know this year.
Right.
And you can get more involved in the process, and even get more done for your organization for sure. So welcome aboard. You're definitely in the right place. Okay, Karen Sands. Karen. Okay. Bank of the Bahamas is probably still trying to get out of there. Something didn't balance still. Okay. Kendrika Sands. Okay. Jada Silvera. I don't know about you guys, but when I hear the name Jada now, what do you think about?
We thinking about Will Smith, Crazy Wife, but also Jada is from the Bahamas Law Enforcement Credit Union, but she was actually switched out of the program and I was put in it. So she is actually taking the fundamentals of record management and I'm taking the auditing class.
Okay, so I can take her on my list then.
Yes, sir.
Indeed. We have a worthy substitute.
Yes, you do.
Okay, last but not least, Mia Stanislaus. Okay, so we have I'm sure a couple more people will be joining us either later or next week. But for now, we certainly have an enthusiastic enough group for us to get cracking with some of this crazy stuff. So I think, let me just see if I can find my notes here somewhere. I think Miguel would have sent you the first half of the notes that we'll be covering this semester. So if you can just find your way to the very beginning. Of course, the whole session will be about auditing fundamentals. And the idea is here not to get you bogged down. Well, you cannot escape it entirely, but with a whole lot of the academic audit mumbo jumbo. Much of it is here, but it's here in a different form. It's here in a different style. It's here in easier language, but a lot of it is here. And a lot of it has been kind of rearranged so that you can make sense of it. Okay? The idea being at the end of the day, not only is it understandable for you, but you can actually apply when necessary a whole lot of this information. Do not panic if a lot of things are not kicking in immediately. Nothing is ever designed to kick in immediately. Okay, so just relax and take it one module at a time, one session at a time. I always encourage students in terms of examination. You know your first exam is probably going to be in week number 6 or thereabouts. After we've done 5 modules, the following week will be your midterm exam. So now that you have that inside information, that means that not only will you be participating in the class stuff, but also you should be doing your own reading and studying and note-taking and all that stuff along the way. Do not wait until the week before you know that your exam is coming up to start paying serious attention to preparation. Don't do that. Start early, like this weekend. So you, for example, classes are on Thursday. Yes, you study every day, you read a little bit every day, you look at stuff a little bit every day, but certainly when weekend rolls around, when you have a little time on your hand to commit to really studying and note-taking and learning and understanding what you're doing. And certainly if you are stuck on something, that would be the time to send me an email, get it sorted out. If you do that each week, especially weekends, when you have more time, no work, no tired at the end of the day kind of thing, it is hard to be unsuccessful. Okay? Very hard. And remember, you make a total commitment for 10 to 12 weeks, and then when you're done, you're done. That's the whole idea. Whatever you do not wait until the last minute to start preparing first for your examinations, either one of them, and certainly the last minute to do your case study. You might still get it out, but it will not be the same as if you take your time. Nor will you get the full essence of it if you do it the night before, as opposed to if you do it over a couple of weeks. Okay? Because inside that case study are all kinds of interesting real life situations, and that's why I picked it, so that you can actually put your pulse on a real life kind of audit of financial statements. Okay, everybody have the first module opened, introduction and overview of accounting. Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, we have it.
great. So you'll see that this module alone is 21 pages, but that's not designed to for you to panic or anything. Some of them have 15 pages, 13. But don't worry about the pages. Let's just focus on the information. So, does anybody have any idea about what auditing is at all?
For me, I'm assuming that it's just basically making sure that everyone follows the policies or the guidelines that are given to them, making sure that their work isn't contrary to what is in the policy. That's just a guess.
Oh, that's a good start. As a matter of fact, that is the aspect of things that auditors actually come in to audit. They come in to see and to check and to verify whether or not persons are following the rules of the company, whether they are financial, compliance, HR, legal, whatever the rules are. Somewhere between the internal auditor and the external auditor. Their job is to check to see whether or not folks are conforming to the policies and procedures of the company, period. Now, typically, when external auditors come in, like PwC, Deloitte & Touche, and others, when they come in to conduct an audit, typically they're coming in to conduct an audit of financial statements. Okay? The internal auditor, on the other hand, typically does not tend to conduct audits on financial statements. Not that they can't and not that they don't, but they typically conduct their audits on the day-to-day operational side of the company. Meaning, if there are cashiers in the company, they check to make sure that the cashiers are following the cash protocols. If there are other policy requirements with regards to HR processes, they might check those to see if HR and company are doing their jobs. If there is a risk department, they might check the activities of the risk manager and his or her team to see if they are actually following through. So basically, the internal auditor is more involved or tend to be more involved in the day-to-day operational side of things, as opposed to auditing financial statements. Again, doesn't mean an internal auditor may not have the qualification to do it. That's typically not their focus. Doesn't mean that they may not walk into the accounts department and say, I'd like to see some vouchers for this particular period, check them out to make sure that whatever came in, what's on the voucher, what's deposited in the bank, check the bank reconciliations and make sure that they were actually done and they were done correctly, and that nobody used the bank reconciliation to hide any transactions, etc., etc., etc. See? So if you were not aware of just those little things already, you're already way ahead of the game, because now the game is on. Fortunately for you, you will get the benefit by virtue of doing this class of some of the experiences that I've seen along the way with regards to auditing and some other things, because again, I have seen some interesting things in my time. Okay?
So let me ask you this question. If the internal auditor is supposed to be making sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do, then who does the internal auditor report to? In my case, would it be not my general manager, but like my supervisory committee or board of directors or something?
Good question. Good question, Rosalie. Your internal auditor should report to the board. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Your external auditor should report to the board. If you have a compliance officer, that person should also report to the board. And the reason why they are reporting to the board is so that nobody else in the organization should have the ability to intimidate or influence them. You follow?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That's an excellent question. Many unions and firms and others still grapple with that. Like, who should internal auditors and compliance officers report to? And every regulator in the world will tell you they should report to the board, because that is the only way they're going to maintain their independence. Now, if the board is in collusion, see that word again? Collusion.
Yes, sir.
How the hell can the board be in collusion? Well, easy. Boards are always in collusion more times than they should be, because all too often boards are made up of buddies. Did anybody hear that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, boards are made up of buddies. Buddies from somewhere, the war, the Salvation Army, the war in Ukraine, high school, the doggone lodge, whatever it is, they're buddies from somewhere. The Delta sorority, something from something. They're all buddies from somewhere, typically. And unfortunately, when people know each other fairly well, oftentimes it interferes with the decision-making process. Does everybody understand where I'm going with this?
Yes, sir.
And one of the reasons why a lot of boards in the Bahamas and around the world prefer to select people to their boards whom they know is because they believe that they can get each other to agree on stuff that they want to agree on. There's a fear that if they select people they don't know, the person or persons they don't know may have an objection, and rightly so. That's one of the reasons why you should have somebody independent on your board who will object, because you cannot and do not want a board full of people who will say yes all the time when it's not good for the company or organization. True or false?
True.
True. Yeah, true. I don't know, Rosalie took us into this difficult domain already. She took us from the nice beginning, the nice introduction and overview of auditing, to the real life world of boards of buddies. That boards of buddies thing is a very serious matter, unfortunately.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the real reason why I asked the question is because when you consider the hierarchy in the credit union in reference to managerial staff, junior staff, or whatever, if you were to take on an internal auditor position, it's like, how do you tell someone who you feel as though is in a higher position than you that their work isn't adding up to the bylaws, the guidelines, the set or whatever. You know, you understand what I'm saying? So that's why I was trying. So now that you tell me that we report to the supervisory committee, we report to the board, it makes it easier.
Indeed. Rosalie, thank you so much for sharing that experience with your colleagues, because they are the ones who need to understand how serious the situation it is that you're talking about. And yes, the reason why I made it exceedingly clear, because I knew the reason why you asked. Okay? A lot of persons get internal audit jobs, and if they're not allowed to report to allowed, quote unquote, that's another issue. They're not allowed to report to the board, but rather some manager or some supervisor somewhere, or some other person with some power play going on, or some idiosyncrasy, or some, God forbid, unsavory behavior, then that internal auditor will, quote unquote, run into trouble, conflict, and all kinds of crazy things. Even the jobs might be threatened, because the person who they're reporting to, they're not the right person or group. They might make a recommendation, especially if they have influence in the organization, to have you dismissed as an internal auditor. Many internal auditors and compliance officers have been dismissed because they had to report on people who had influence, and they reported to people who could fire and fired them, which of course is unethical. It shouldn't happen.
So how do you work around that?
You follow the rules and the law, and you be bold. How about that? Does being bold mean sometimes that you run into trouble and lose your job potentially every blue moon? Yes. But sometimes it's better to lose your job and run into a little uncomfortability than to put your reputation on the line. You understand?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely. So the reason why regulators like the Central Bank of the Bahamas, the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, the Insurance Commission of the Bahamas, etc., insist that internal auditors and compliance officers report directly to the board is so that you guys who are in those jobs do not have to fight with the rest of the organization for the same reasons that you mentioned, Rosalie, and 5,000 others reasons. You follow? So if you are in an organization, credit union or otherwise, and they say you are not reporting to the board, you're reporting to me, whoever me is, whoever the hell me is, then you know as of tonight, you have a problem, Houston. And maybe you need to seek out the regulator for the union, which is the Central Bank of Bahamas, to get clarity. And chances are 99% of the time they'll tell you that your responsibility is not to report to Tingham, but rather the board. I'd be very surprised if a regulator tells you to report to Tingham rather than the board. Okay? For the same
Understood.
Indeed. That is sometimes easier said than done because organizations can be a tricky place to be. People have all kinds of idiosyncrasies and influence. People are up to all kinds of interesting things. And interesting is a very euphemistic way to put some very deep and dark things that are going on. And if you're in those kinds of jobs that we're talking about, then you become a target. It makes your job a little more difficult, but you have to maintain your posture and be firm in your resolve, just as external auditors have to be when they come in. No matter what senior management of the board tries to tell them to get them to change their opinion, whatever opinion the auditors have, if it's negative, they have to report it as such. They cannot be bribed or talked out of reporting something else. They should not be. Couple of them have been in the past couple of years, but typically that should not be the case. Okay. All right. Man, you guys have come up with some great stuff first night. All right. But that's the whole point. And the idea here is as we go forward, say what you have to say. Like you, Biggity, say what you mean and
Man, what you say?
you Biggity. Yeah. All right. In terms of discussions in this class, the more you say, the more your colleagues will learn, and the more you will probably learn as well, because hopefully some of them will give feedback. And so you feed off each other and make each other a little bit better at what you're doing. That's the whole idea. All right. So we know then that auditing comes from the Latin word audio, audare, audavi, audatum, which means to hear. Now, how the hell I remember that? Because I did Latin in high school for some strange reason. Father Strong insisted that we had to do that bloody, stinky old subject language called Latin. Except I found out later on in my life that that Latin turned out to be very useful to me in many different ways, since most and many of the key core words in English, French, German, and other subjects, in fact, came from Latin, as did the word audit. And audit in Latin means to hear. That's where we get the word audio. Remember that word in English? How's your audio today? Means to hear. And so an audit is when an internal or external audit looks at the firm and they quote unquote hear what's going on financially or otherwise to see if the firm is following through with the rules and regulations. So typically it's like a legal hearing, except that an audit is a financial hearing. So when you go into court, you will hear the legal arguments. See, you will hear the legal arguments. When the auditors go to work, they will listen to the financial sounds that are coming from those financial and other records to see whether or not what is being done properly. And if it's not, they will hold a hearing for the board of directors to let them know what's going on. Okay? Pull a Marvin Gaye on you, what's going on. And that's why when auditors come in, or internal auditors go to work, people sometimes tend to get a little bit jumpy, especially those who might be up to what, anyone?
Collusion.
Yeah, collusion. Yeah, doggone it. Those who might be colluding, or if they're not colluding, they're individually and all by themselves, up to no flicking good. That's it. All right. So now you have the foundation of what you're going to be jumping into this semester. And so everything else we'll be talking about will be based on those premises that we talked about with regards to the audit. Okay? Plus some other interesting things. All right, so let's begin. Notice your text starts off with the expression economic decisions. Now, economic decisions has to do with, for anybody who's done economics of any kind, how we allocate resources. And all of us, whether it's work, church, home, government, whatever, we're always making economic decisions, how to allocate resources. When we get our paychecks at the end of the week or end of the month, we're making economic resource decisions. Like, what are we going to do with this money? Who's going to get what? Who's going to get paid first? Who's going to get paid as last? Who's not going to be paid at all? All right, because there's no more money left, because you have more bills than money. Anybody ever had more both bills than money? I'm the only one who's ever been in that position in life. More bills than money.
That's me right now.
Don't worry, you're not alone. Doesn't matter if folks don't say anything. The average person, unless you're a Wilson, seminar, somebody like those guys, we and some other people, the average person oftentimes end up with more bills and monies for a significant part of our lives until things doggone settle down, God forbid. But in any event, we are constantly making economic decisions everywhere about what to do with resources. Okay? For example, the decision to go to the bank and get a loan, that's a decision. To start a business, to pay school fees, college fees, whatever the case might be. These are all decisions that have financial implications for the individual or the business. And so it is not unusual to see these things happening. When you go to work every day, persons are always looking at the financial condition of the company you work for, I'm sure. Depending on where your job is, you hear discussions about financial statements and the financial position of the company and the cash flow of the company and how well they're doing. All of these things are based around economic decisions. And so all this information that you gather from day to day is really just designed for management to make decisions. And not only make decisions, but the information has to be reliable enough in order for management to be comfortable and confident enough that the information can be used to make good and proper decisions. One of the reasons why external audits are necessary is not just to catch people who are quote unquote thieving, as we say in Bahamas, but primarily to make sure that the information and the practices and procedures are being carried out according to policy and procedure. With regards to financial statements, we have this thing called generally accepted accounting principles. So when auditors come in to go to the accounts department to see the chief accountant, financial controller, and his or her gang, they're going to see whether or not those financial statements are being done according to the GAAP rules. Because GAAP rules govern all financial accounting activity in the Bahamas, in the world, and everywhere, except certain countries who don't want to use it, like maybe China and certain parts of Africa and certain parts of the Middle East and some crazy places where they don't want to be guided by anything other than what they want to be guided by. So again, these economic decisions by management and persons within the firm, they're being made every day. In your home, that's your firm. You make economic decisions all the time. Govern how you manage your home. You're in charge of a church, same thing. In charge of the government, same thing. These principles apply across the board. By the way, did you guys know that the government has an auditor as well? Its own auditor? Like they don't call PwC unless they want something specific done. The government has its own auditor. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
I know.
So who would be that auditor?
Well, the government auditor is called the Auditor General of the Bahamas. Ever heard about that?
No, sir.
Yeah. So you guys thought you signed up just for an audit class so you could see if you could pass it and move on. But you're going to be in for a rude awakening. You're going to find all kinds of interesting things like collusion, see? And Auditor General of the Bahamas. And I promise you, you're going to walk away with a whole lot of things inside the text that I've given you and prepared for you, and things outside of the text. All right. So what does the Auditor General of the Bahamas do? What does he do? He is responsible. Question?
No, sorry.
Yeah. He is responsible for auditing all government entities in the Commonwealth to make sure that civil servants in the Treasury, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of any ministry, the Auditor General of the Bahamas can go into any government department at any time and conduct an audit whenever he feels like it to make sure that the government's money is being properly accounted for in its entirety. And if he discovers any discrepancies, he has the authority and the responsibility to report them to the cabinet, like any other auditor has to report to the board of directors if they come into a firm and find any irregularities. Can the Auditor General be bribed? Yes. Should he be? No. Might somebody try to? Of course, people are always trying to get away with something. But that person in that job, like any other auditor, has to be independent and be above and beyond reproach, money included. And we all know that money is a very powerful influencer. In fact, most of the bad decisions we make in our lives are because of money.
Mr. Wilkinson,
Yes.
in terms of the entire government agency, you're saying one person, and I think Terrence Bastian?
Yes.
Yes, and so I'm saying to you, it's not a team of individuals, it's just one person,
Oh, no.
not a department.
No, great question, Dana. No. Terrence has a whole gang of auditors behind him.
Okay, just checking, okay.
Yeah, I know, good. That's a good point. Because you know where under the sun he could ever get that job done. No, he has an Auditor General's department with scores and scores and scores of auditors working in that department under him. And he has some senior people along the way, like deputy auditor, senior auditor, auditor of this and senior auditor, senior auditor, senior, that senior, and junior middle audit, like that all the way down. So he has a whole bunch of people who he commissions to go out, just like any other audit firm, to conduct these departmental auditors in Nassau and all of the Family Islands. And of course, the Family Islands has to be checked regularly because out there people think that nobody's watching, correct?
Correct. Can I ask a question, please?
Certainly.
Okay, so we know it's public knowledge that there's a major audit going on in this country. So you're saying that the Auditor General Office of the Bahamas is conducting this major audit,
Well,
a forensic audit.
which department is being audited, by the way?
Well, all kind of departments, from what I see, the government conducting the audits.
Yes.
For example, I think it has something to do with Hurricane Dorian
Right,
1.
right.
Yeah, and then some other stuff I saw out there.
Yeah, the COVID money distributions
Correct.
and all kinds of other things, of course. And yeah, a bunch of audits are being done of these various areas to see if the government's money was spent and utilized and handled properly. And to make sure that Tom Jones and Mary didn't collude to run off with any of it somewhere. Tuck it into your bank accounts and call it theirs, which is not uncommon in the Bahamas or around the world. Folks are always looking to run off with stuff. And so the Auditor General's job, like any other auditor, and his team is to reconcile receipts and expenditures coming into the government and making sure that the money is received correctly, it's deposited correctly, and it's disbursed correctly. God forbid. That should be interesting. And his final reports should also be interesting. So for those of you who are now aware that we have an Auditor General Department and they are indeed conducting audits of various government entities and activities, now you can extend your curiosity to make a note somewhere to follow up and see what were the results of those audits by Mr. Bastian's company of auditors. Again, at the bottom of the issue of auditing is the word reliability. Auditors come into an environment with the assumption that the information that they're going to audit is reliable. And the only way information can be reliable if folks are following the rules. If they're not, then unreliability kicks in and puts the whole position of the firm entity into question, for sure. Which is why, for example, if a lawyer is found to have been unethical with one case, typically what has to happen? They have to go back and look at all the cases previously that that particular lawyer handled to make sure that they didn't mishandle the last 500. Imagine what a nightmare that is. Okay? All because the issue of reliability came up. They discovered that the lawyer's position in a particular current case was not reliable, and therefore everything else that that lawyer handled is presumed to be unreliable. All right, good point. Just as a matter of interest, the Auditor General is appointed by the government for life. The Auditor General cannot be fired from the job once appointed unless he or she does something egregious. Who could think about what something egregious might be for a statutory position like that? What could the Auditor General do who cannot be fired to cause him to be removed from his position?
Probably like lying on what he's seen on letting people pay him off.
Yeah, if he's found to be taking bribes, that might be something, for sure. Bribes, taking bribes.
Collusion as well.
Say it again.
He could also be colluding with other government officials.
He could be colluding to the point where whatever, depending on what it is, he has to go. Okay, of course, these are all very good reasons that might cause some action to be taken to remove him from his position. The problem is the Auditor General's job is a statutory position, which means that it's created by law. And so once that person is put into that position, typically they don't come out. They're like Supreme Court justices in the US. They don't come out unless they resign or die.
I have a question.
Yes.
How does one be appointed to that position? Like, is there some type of general like election or?
No. That's a good point though. But no, unlike the DA in the United States where they have to be elected, the Auditor General is not elected by the people. Maybe he should be, or she.
Because if they just go in based off one person's opinion to elect that specific individual as an auditor, wouldn't that be a little sketch?
Could be. But here's what we do still at the moment. The position and the decision is something of a parliamentary one. I think there's a vote at the parliamentary level, if I'm not mistaken, and that person is selected. Of course, whoever is the leading government at the time will be the person who will finally get to make that decision. And so that's a slight flaw in that system. But once again, one way or the other, once that person is appointed, we have to assume that they're acting independently, God forbid, and that they will not take sides with any particular political groups or anybody else for that matter, and to do their jobs independently and effectively. That's what we have to presume. Okay? God forbid. Is the process completely independent? Hell no. Is anything ever really completely independent? Probably not. Okay? But we have best effort, and the best effort that we came up with a long time ago was to make the Auditor General's job a statutory one, meaning that they have a job for life, and the job for life is supposed to help them to be more independent and not be subject to bribery and influence by politicians, ting 'em or ting 'em them, as we say here at home. Okay? That's how serious this business of auditing is. Unreliable information is not ever good. It causes us to make poor decisions about how to deal with our resources in society. Decision makers look bad and ineffective if information is unreliable. For sure. It's like making a loan again. If you make a loan on the assumption that the financial statements are in order, that the auditor's report on the financial statement was correct, and then you find out that the auditor lied, the information in financial was incorrect, and then suddenly the bank cannot be paid the money on its principal and interest, and eventually, if they don't find a way to get that loan back quickly, they can end up losing the entire loan proceeds. Okay? So the point we're making is this business of auditing is fundamentally based on reliability of information. And we see any information that we know from our own personal experiences already. Unreliable, anything is not good, like an unreliable spouse. Do you have any unreliable spouses in the Bahamas?
Plenty.
Without a
Plenty.
doubt.
I'm sure we do.
Yeah, we do. Do you have any unreliable pastors?
Oh, yeah.
Politicians?
I know that's right.
Are all teachers good?
No.
Not.
I know these are some tough questions, but if we're going to make reliable, good decisions going forward, we have to make sure that whatever we're thinking about is based on the proper premise. And that's called reliable information. And one of the ways to be effective with reliable information is not to act on unreliable information, especially when you know it's unreliable, just because Tingham them said so. And you know, in the Bahamas, Tingham in the bush,
He ain't got no name.
yeah, which makes it worse. Because now we can't find out who the culprit is. All right. So welcome to the auditor's world. The auditor needs to be auditing in a world where information is accurate, reliable, fair, and based on the proper and correct activities within the firm. Same simple enough. Why would there be unreliable information if everybody's following the rules? Shouldn't we all be doing the right thing? Truth be told, we're not all doing the right thing. And that's why we have the audit process, the compliance process to check people. Not everybody's doing the wrong thing, but too many people are not doing the right thing. And therein lies the problem. Okay? Now, I've already said that the word audit comes from the Latin word audire, audio, which means to hear. and that an auditor's job is to listen to the accounts. And how does he do that? Well, he reads all the information prepared by the accountant. Now, the word accountant has finally come up, which brings me now to my next question for you guys. Is anybody in this class, ever done an accounting class?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Only at the high school level, though.
that's fine. If you've done any accounting whatsoever and remember anything about it whatsoever, then you will not be completely out in left field when certain accounting expressions come up in audit. Because remember, who's the auditor auditing? The external auditor in particular, accountants. They're auditing financial statements. And so they're coming in with accounting information in order to check the accountants and his or her team, the financial controller, and whomever, chief accountant, etc., and their team to make sure that they are following generally accepted accounting principles. Sure. Auditing is old. You'll see that when you read it. Been around forever. The old Bible countries, auditing has been around. These hearings, checking the books. Because people have always been honest and what? Dishonest. Just like people are always either good or evil. People are always either honest or dishonest. And so somebody's had to come up with audire a long time ago. From old Latin was spoken back in Greece, Rome, and those places in order to have a hearing on the books, because they kept records then, not quite electronically like we do today, but they kept records. And if you were an honest, upright accountant back in those days, then you kept accurate, honest records. And if you were not, then you kept strange, funny, unpredictable records that have been cooked, just as people are doing today. So auditing and hearings have been around a long time. From way back in ancient Greece and Mesopotamia and Egypt and Rome, all those, India, by the way, India is a very old country, like China and Africa have been around forever, for sure. And notice we are told that from the very beginning, thousands of years ago, the original objective of auditing was to detect and prevent errors and frauds. Imagine that. Even before Jesus came, auditors were checking the financial records or other records to see if they were reliable and to see if they could detect and prevent errors and frauds. You will discover soon enough that errors tend to be unintentional and frauds tend to be very intentional. When somebody sets out to make an error, oftentimes it's not deliberate. And so we say errors are unintentional. But when they set out to defraud, it's very intentional. It's like a young lady who people call a gold digger, for example. She says, I'm not interested in marrying anybody for love. I just want money. And so she already knows that that is her intention. So it doesn't matter whatever else happens. It's kind of like fraud. You already know in advance what you're going to do. You know why. You're just waiting for the victim. And this is what fraudulent people are all about. They already know what they're going to do. They're planning it all the time, and they're just waiting for a victim or an opportunity. And so hence the audit. Checking, all the way from ancient times, all the way through the 18th century, a couple of hundred years ago, when companies, etc., were created and became more sophisticated. We went from owners of old business to shareholders who invested money in the companies and all this kind of stuff, who then wanted auditors to go in and make sure that the board and the rest of the people who work for that company were not defrauding them or wasting their resources, which is the money they invest in the firm. And even today, shareholders are always interested in the auditor's report Because sometimes some firms have board members who are not interested in the firm per se, but only in filling their own pockets, sadly. And some shareholders know this, which is why sometimes, depending on the situation, shareholders might eventually, based on the report of an auditor, auditing firm, fire an entire board and start all over again with a new board. That's why the auditor's report is so critical, that it says exactly what the problems are they found, so that shareholders can know what to do about their investment in that firm, whether or not they should continue with that board that's running a company that's continuing losing money, or that is continually paying high fines to the government because of scandalous behavior that they don't seem to be fixing. Now, that might be a little more on the high end for you guys who are maybe not operating at that level in your lives yet. But what the hell? It's important to know. And wherever you are in the organization, whether it's the lower, middle, or management level, in any event, it's important to know these things so that when you run into them here or in the future, at least you'll be able to function. Hopefully make decisions that will be in the best interest of your company and yourself. Okay. So there are many definitions of the word auditing. I mentioned one in your text about Spicer and Pegler. They came up with their little thing about auditing, and I quote, "Auditing is such an examination of books of accounts, financial statements, and vouchers of business, as will enable the auditors to satisfy himself," meaning herself as well, "that the balance sheet is properly drawn up so as to give a true and fair view of the state of affairs in the business, and that the profit and loss account gives true and fair view of the profit and loss for the financial period according to the best of information and explanation given to the auditor as shown by the books, and if not, in what respect he is not satisfied." In other words, go in, check it out. If it's in order, report it's in order. If it's not, say so. That is the nature of the auditor's work. Auditing has also been defined as an examination of accounting records. See, again, undertaking with a view to establish whether they are correctly and completely done. It's not, all of them are not. And some of them are messed up because of errors, which are unintentional normally. And some of them are messed up because of fraud, which are intentional. When auditors come in, the board and senior management hopes desperately that they will not find anything untoward. And if something is going on within the company, they're hoping also that they will discover what it is, okay? And report it to the board. That's the deal. That's what senior management and boards are always hoping that the auditors will do. The right thing, provided that they're doing the right thing. Because unfortunately, there are many boards and senior management people around the world who are unethical and dishonest. And the firm is not their first priority. Their pockets are their first priority, even though they might give the impression that the firm or the organization is. And that should not be the case, okay, for sure. All right. So I think I've chatted enough for tonight. Not tonight, so far. Why don't we go to page 3 of our notes? If you look at page 3, the second paragraph beginning the audit, does everybody see that? Page 3, the audit.
Yes.
Great. That way I don't have to talk the whole night. I can get somebody else to jump into the Titanic and help us row. Okay, who's on top of my list? Danielle, you're on top of my list. I'm going to start there. Why don't you begin reading with the audit?
Sorry, you said page 3, the
Yeah.
audit?
Yes,
Oh.
second paragraph.
Okay. The audit is often described as an instrument of financial control. It acts as a safeguard on behalf of the proprietors, whether an individual, partnership, or company, against extravagance, carefulness, or fraud on the part of the proprietors, agents, or servants in the realization and utilization of the money or other assets. And it ensures on the proprietor's behalf that the accounts maintained truly represent facts and that the expenditure has been incurred with due regularity and propriety. The agency employed for this purpose is called an auditor.
Take a pen for one moment, they know. Notice in that paragraph that encapsulates everything that we're going to be talking about wrapped up into one. All the things we're going to be talking about this semester, all the tons of money that firms pay auditors to come in and audit their books, and so on, are wrapped up in this very same paragraph. Okay. And notice how it is described as an instrument of financial control. See, control, because we know that we're not checking or watching. Human nature being what it is, will get out of control sooner or later. Notice it also says that the audit acts as a safeguard on behalf of owners of business, whether it's a sole proprietorship, a partnership, a company, a union, a bank, a church, a government, whatever it is. They act as the safeguard against what? Notice the words. Very well articulated for a reason. Against extravagance. Because board members are known to waste company money having a ball. And when it's time to give a salary increase, they say there's no money. Private jets flying around, first class hotels, wasting company money, saying that they're doing company business. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're far more extravagant than they need to be. And shareholders oftentimes don't like this, because at the end of the day, the more money the company spends, the less money is available to pay in dividends to the owners of the company, who are called shareholders. Okay? So to safeguard the firm against extravagance and carelessness, see? Carelessness and fraud, which is the intentional behavior by individuals to take resources of the firm for themselves. Wow. And the audit ensures on behalf of the owners of the firm that the accounts maintained within their companies truly represent the facts. Because sometimes people cook the books and change numbers and change information and hide stuff and tear things up and do all kinds of crazy stuff, which leaves the information misrepresented and incorrect. And to ensure that expenditure has been incurred with regularity and propriety, meaning money is spent on for the purposes that it's supposed to be spent for, that it's not being spent to buy somebody's personal stuff, to take personal trips, and to have a ball on behalf of the company's resources without the proper authorization. The agency or group or entity employed for this purpose is called the auditor, whether it's internal, external, auditor general, anybody in such capacity. Big time job they have. Big time responsibility. Okay, then I'll keep going. Features of the audit. Dana, are you there?
Oh, I didn't realize you.
Yeah, features of the audit. Keep going.
Features of auditing. Audit. Can you hear me?
Indeed.
Okay. Audit is a systematic and scientific examination of the books of accounts of a business. Audit is undertaken by an independent person or body of persons who are duly qualified for the job. Audit is a verification of the results shown by the profit and loss account and the state of affairs as shown by the balance sheet. Audit is a crucial review of the system of accounting and internal control. Audit is done with the help of vouchers, documents, information, and explanations received from the authorities. The auditor has to satisfy himself with the authenticity of the financial statements and report that they exhibit a true and fair view of the state of affairs of the concern. The auditor has to inspect, compare, check, review, scrutinize the vouchers supporting the transactions and examine correspondence, minute books of the shareholders, directors, the memorandum of association, and articles of association, etc., in order to establish correctness of the books of accounts.
Stick a pin again, Danielle. Notice these features. They are very clear and unequivocal. What do I mean by unequivocal? Anybody knows what that funny word means? Unequivocal. I know you don't hear it too often. Does anybody have access to Google?
It means leaving no doubt or unambiguous.
Thank you very much, India. That's exactly what it means. So the auditor and the audit firm is supposed to be unequivocal in its work, including the Auditor General of the Bahamas or any other country for that matter. Unequivocal means that they should go about their task without any doubt and without any influence being imposed on them by women, dancing girls, or anything else. Fancy cars, nothing is supposed to interfere with the independence of the auditor. Not enough just to be qualified, to have a CPA or some other qualification to be the auditor. You also need to be independent and free of bias and be a person who cannot be bribed. My. And then you go into the firm and make sure that you're checking the financial statements correctly. You're applying the rules of audit to make sure that those vouchers and documents, etc., are available and checked and rechecked if necessary. Do whatever comparative work you need to do, any scrutinies, any files, look at them, make sure that you're doing a complete review of the affairs of the company so that when you give your audit opinion, which we'll talk about later, there are different types of audit opinions that you will see eventually. You'll be satisfied that you've done all that is necessary to say that based on what you have checked, you have a true and fair position that the company has followed the rules of GAAP and that you have not discovered any major errors or fraud. And that if you do, you will have to disclose them in your report in detail. And if you know who committed them, who? All right. Keep going, Danielle.
She said she had to step out for a moment, but she's still listening.
Okay, then I need a pinch hitter. Let's see who's going to be my pinch hitter until she gets back. India.
Hi.
Okay, India, why don't you kick in until she returns?
Okay.
Objective of the audit.
Objective of auditing. There are two main objectives of auditing, the primary objective and the secondary or incidental objective.
By the way, that sounds like an exam question to me, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we like to ask like, what are the two main objectives of auditing? Primarily because they're so important to the audit process, okay? I think that sounds like a hint to me. All right, keep going.
A, primary objective. The primary duty or objective of the auditor is to report the owners, whether the balance sheet gives a true and fair view of the company's state of affairs, and the profit and loss account gives a correct figure of profit and loss for the financial year. Keep going.
Keep going.
B, secondary objective, also called the incidental objective, as it is incidental to the satisfaction of the main objective. The incidental objective of auditing are detection and prevention of frauds and detection and prevention of errors. Detection of material frauds and errors as an incidental objective of independent financial auditing flows from the main objective of determining whether the financial statements gives a true and fair view. An auditor should bear in mind the possibility of the existence of frauds or errors in the accounts under audit, since they may cause the financial position to be misstated. Frauds refer to intentional misrepresentation of financial information with the intention to deceive. Frauds can take place in the form of manipulation of accounts, misappropriation of cash, and misappropriation of goods. It is of great importance for the auditor to detect any frauds and prevent their reoccurrence. Errors refer to the unintentional mistakes in the financial information arising on account of ignorance of accounting principles, i.e. principal errors, or errors arising out of the negligence of accounting staff, i.e. clerical errors.
Now, watch this carefully. Notice in the terms of those two objectives, the primary objective is true and fair view. And what does that mean for the auditor and the firm? It means that the auditor wants to be satisfied that the company's balance sheet and profit and loss statement are true and correct in terms of the accounting principles applied to prepare them. If the auditor finds any errors in the preparation of those statements, if those errors are unintentional, then they are considered unintentional and not fraudulent, meaning somebody made a mistake. And so the auditor will indicate that the error was located and what needs to be done to correct it, and advise management of the accounting department to correct it. Pretty straightforward stuff. That's the way it should be. Again, all of this is designed for the primary objective to be achieved, which is that the financial statements are true and fair. That's really the point. And then, of course, secondary to that primary objective is the problem of the detection and prevention of frauds and errors. And so while the auditor is checking with generally accepted accounting principles using auditing principles to make sure that the financial statements are correct, at the same time, the auditor has to be aware of frauds and errors and be on the lookout to see if anything comes up in the review to suggest the existence of frauds and errors, and if there are any, what needs to be done about them and what can be done about preventing them in the future. Okay. So these are the things that is on the mind of the auditor, or should be, when they come into your organization. And now that you guys know a little bit about the audit process already, you now have a little idea of what's going on in the minds of your auditors, which means that depending on where you work in your organization, if you see anything out of whack that could potentially be picked up, noted, and identified by the auditors, whether it's errors or frauds or otherwise, then you are now in a position to try to correct it before your auditors come. It's another beautiful thing about having this kind of information, no matter what part of your organization you work in, and no matter what type of organization you work for. Okay? And notice where fraud thrives. It thrives with people who seek to manipulate accounts. For example, if somebody comes in and make a $500 payment on an outstanding account for a client, instead of processing it as cash to go to the bank because they received the money and credit to the client account so that it can show a reduction in the balance owing by the client, the individual tears up the receipt, the money never gets to the bank, and they keep the money. And if they are somehow, God forbid, responsible for posting as well as collecting money, worse, because that transaction will never be posted. And the only time that will be discovered if the auditors send out a note to the persons who owe the company money and say, verify your balance, and somebody comes back and say, wait one cotton picking minute. I already paid $2,000 into the company, and therefore this balance is incorrect. Here are my receipts. And it's probably then and only then that the company will recognize that those payments were not properly processed. And folks are always looking to misappropriate cash. Not everybody. Not all of us are dishonest. Not all of us are fraudulent. Thank God. But too many persons are, and too many persons continue to be. And so folks are always looking to misappropriate or misuse money, steal it, run off with it, send it places it shouldn't go. Okay? I wouldn't talk about a misappropriation of goods. Companies who use thousands and thousands of, and the guy who owns SuperValue will tell you, he knows every year he loses tens of thousands of dollars in inventory from the warehouse. Folks go to the back where nobody goes because it's filled with stuff and just grab stuff and do something, throw it out the window. Whatever people do within organizations in order to run off with the goods. All right. Okay, keep going, India.
Okay. Okay. Expression of opinion. When we speak of the objective, we rationalize the thinking process to formulate a set of obtainable goals with reference to the circumstances, feasibility, and constraints. In money matters, frauds and errors are commonplace occurrences. Apart from this, the statements of account have their own purpose and use of portraying the financial situation. The objective of audit naturally should be to see that what the statements of accounts convey is true and not misleading, and that such errors and frauds do not exist as to distort what the accounts should really convey.
Let me ask you guys a question before India goes on. How would you define anyone in the group a balance sheet? What do you understand a balance sheet to be? Anyone?
Just making sure all of your debits and credits are aligned. Comes back, it balances pretty much.
Well, okay, you're on the right track, and you're on a very important track, because that track you're on is called the trial balance. All right? Because the trial balance is designed to check the accuracy of the information in the financial statements. And usually if the trial balance is correct and everything has been done properly, then your balance sheet should be correct. But what sits in the balance sheet? What can we find in the balance sheet pertaining to the company? Why is it so important?
Wouldn't that be where changes are made if any discrepancies are detected in the trial balance?
True, if they're detected. Or let me ask another way. The balance sheet.
The balance sheet contains the assets, liabilities, owner's capital, and let's say assets, liabilities, and
Yes,
I forgot.
those three, yes. The balance sheet contains the assets, which is everything the company owns, the liabilities, which are everything the company owes, and the equity or shareholders' equity, which represents your investment in the company. In other words, if the assets total $10 million Your liabilities total $8 million. What would be your equity? Well, we usually subtract the liabilities from the assets, and so the equity.
2 million.
Yeah,
I think
equity
it was-
would be. Your
You
assets,
say 10 million minus 8.
8 million.
It's 2 million.
So your equity would be
Yeah,
2
2
million.
million.
Sorry, my mic was mute all that time.
Oh, okay. And so, yeah, your equity is 2 million. What is that 2 million? Your net worth. Anybody ever heard that expression, net worth?
Right.
Yes.
Yes, the network.
And
Yeah.
that's everything that you own. That would be after any expenses and all of that.
Yeah,
taken
your
out.
net worth is what you own after all your debts are paid. Okay? Your net worth is what you own after your debts are paid. So if you have a house and a car and a boat and they value $1 million, but you owe $800,000 on the boat and $100,000 on the car, what is your net worth?
100,000.
That's all.
Yeah.
But you're still floating, you're still like sailing in a very expensive boat, driving a very expensive car and living in an expensive house. It's just that you owe money on them. And until you paid them off, you don't really own them completely, do you?
No.
But in any given day, you could sell everything and then pay off your debts. And in
And
this
probably
yeah, in this example, if you sell everything and pay off your debts, you'll be left with $100,000. Okay. All right, it's important to know that's your balance sheet. What about your profit and loss or income statement? What is that? What elements are in there? What important elements are in there? 3 important elements. What are they? Revenue,
income.
which is revenue,
Sorry.
Expense.
expenses, and
I forget what the other one name. That's when you're starting it off. Beginning when you're starting the process.
Capital.
yeah, but your capital comes up a little bit later.
I forget what it's be to the bottom.
But the real third element is net profit or loss. Remember?
Yeah,
In
that's
other words, how do you know when a company makes a profit?
yeah. The debit have to be your credit.
Sounds like something that should be the other way around.
Well, in banking, it's be confusing. You got to deal on the account side because when you go in, if you learn accounts and you go into banking, it's completely opposite.
Well, at least that's what people think until they discover why the bank calls it what it calls it.
Okay.
Okay? So yes, your point is taken.
A debit is a credit to a company. A debit is removing your money from the bank. That's the balance right there.
Yeah, indeed. And a credit is a benefit to the company from the bank.
Right.
However, the reason why cash in the bank is a credit is because the bank does not own that money. And so therefore that credit is a liability to the bank. That's why it's a credit. You understand, everyone?
Yeah.
You have to say it.
Yeah.
The credit, see, when you go to the bank and say, credit $300 to my account, and the bank credits $300 to your account, the bank credits it because the bank owes it to you.
Mhm.
So it's a liability to the bank. Do you follow?
Yes.
Okay. Very important thing to know. All right. Remember, anytime people put money in their bank, that's not the bank's money. That is your money, your deposit. And all deposits in the bank is a liability because the bank does not own it.
No. They make profit from interest.
Oh,
Yeah.
they trade on it. They be trading on your money.
Yeah, they lend it. And that's how banks make money.
They be selling that money and getting the profit from it.
They lend it and make interest on it. And they keep the interest and your money is there whenever you need it. But that money is a credit because they owe it to you. Okay, and any student of accounting will know that liabilities are always credits. And that's why we say credit my account. Okay. Now in the financial accounting world, a credit, depending on what category you're dealing with, is either a plus or a minus. Okay. So for example, if it's a liability, then it's a credit, but it's an amount of money that is owed by the company. If it's revenue, it's also a credit, but it's money that is earned by the company. See, it all depends. And this is why students of accounting have to go through all that pain and suffering to differentiate between these debits and credits and what they mean, when, and why, including transactions on the bike. Okay, for sure. All right, so those are your two important statements that you will see coming up from time to time. That's why I interrupted the process just to do a little refresher. Okay? So the balance sheet is made up of assets, liabilities, and equity. The profit and loss account is made up of revenue, expenses, and net profit or loss. Net profit is generated when revenues are greater than expenses, and a net loss is generated when expenses are greater than revenues. So if you get your paycheck of $2,500 a month and you spend $3,000, you have just effectively generated a loss of $500 because you've spent more than you've earned. God forbid where you got the other 500 from, but you spent it from some source. Okay? And so you have operated at a loss for that month. And any company whose expenses are greater than their income will operate at a loss. And if they keep operating at a loss, sooner or later, what will happen?
Bankruptcy?
Yeah, they'll go out of business. Very simple. Just like the COVID did for many companies, caused them to shut down completely. But even before COVID, companies were shutting down because they were unprofitable. They were experiencing too many losses for one reason or another. And when that happens, you have to get out of the business. All right, keep going, India.
Okay. Until recently, the principal emphasis was on arithmetical accuracy. Adequate attention was not paid to appropriate application of accounting principle and disclosure for ensuring preparation of accounting statements in such a way as to enable the reader of the accounting statement to form a correct view of the situation. Quite a few organizations took advantage of the situation and manipulated profits or loss and assets and liabilities to highlight or conceal the true picture. The state of affairs issue came up for consideration in the Royal Mail stamp packet company's case, which required the auditors to state inter alia whether the statements of account are true and fair.
In other words, see that word manipulate? That is key. That is not only because it happened in the old days, it has happened. And people are always looking to manipulate the financial statements for one reason or another, changing profit and loss numbers, changing asset and liability numbers to suit whatever the personal objective of senior management might be in a particular firm. And sometimes they even get auditors to collude with them. See that word again? My. Keeps coming up. All right, keep going.
The results of the above case has become the present day audit objective. The implication of the substitution of true and fair need to be understood. There has been a shift of emphasis from arithmetical accuracy to the question of reliability to the financial statements. A statement may be reliable even though there are some errors or even frauds, provided that they are not so big as to distort the picture. The word correct was somewhat misplaced as the accounting largely consists of estimates. However, you should not infer
Right, yes.
that the detection of errors and frauds is no longer an audit objective. It is indeed an audit objective because statements of accounts drawn up from books containing serious mistakes and fraudulent entries cannot be considered as a true and fair statement.
Let me just say before she goes on, what they are saying here is that in recent times, folks have been trying to focus so much on the financial statements being true and fair, according to generally accepted accounting principles, that there was a suggestion or an inference, see? They tried to infer that the whole issue of the detection of errors and frauds need not be a focal point or even an audit objective. But in essence, we're saying, are you kidding me? Unless we focus on frauds and errors, all too often, it will be difficult to determine or come up with an opinion as to whether a set of financial statements are indeed true and fair. For how can they be true and fair if there are errors and frauds rampant through the financial statements? Doesn't make sense whatsoever. So the issue of errors and frauds are still very crucial to the conclusion and opinion that a set of financial statements are indeed true and fair. Okay? All right, keep going.
All right, to establish whether the financial statements show a true and fair state of affairs, the auditors must carry out a process of examination and verification, and if errors and frauds exist, they would come to his attention in the ordinary course of checking. But detection of errors or frauds is not the primary aim of the audit. The primary aim is the establishment of a degree of reliability of the annual statements of accounts. If there is fraud in the accounts, which does not come to light in the normal course of the examination of accounts, it will not be construed as an auditor failure, provided the auditor was not negligent in carrying out his normal work.
Very interesting. Very interesting. No, please take note. Hey, and there's a little wavering between, okay, should the primary objective of the auditor when they come in, internal or external, to be looking for fraud? We're saying, no, not really. Just make sure all the other financial statement accounts, the balances are correct, that generally the information is correct, the transactions are basically correct, whatever it is we're checking. And then if some fraud exists, but it doesn't come up or we miss it, or may not be particularly significant, then we should still consider the financial statements to be true and fair. Very interesting theory. All right, keep going, which is probably why in recent years, some firms that were given a clean bill of health by auditors some months later collapsed because some fraud may have come to light or finally materialized or manifests itself, and then the company falls apart following the audit that was given as what? True and fair and okay. Very interesting. Keep going.
Okay, the detection of fraud and errors. The term fraud means the willful misrepresentation made with an intention of deceiving others. It is a deliberate mistake committed in the accounts with a view to get personal gain. In accounting, fraud means two things: defalcation, involving misappropriation of either cash or good; fraudulent manipulation of accounts not involving defalcation, overstatement or understatement of profits. Fraud through defalcation. Following are the methods of defalcation involving misappropriation of cash or goods. By misappropriating the receipt by not recording the same in the cash book. by destroying the carbon copy or counterfoil of the receipt and misappropriating the cash receipt by entering less amount on the counterfoil and misappropriating the difference between money actually received and the amount entered on the counterfoil of the receipt book. 4, by not recording the receipt of sale of casual nature, for example, sale of scrap and the sale of old newspaper. By omitting to record cash donations received by nonprofit making charitable institution. 6, by misappropriating the cash received on discounting the bills receivable and showing them as bills outstanding on hand. 7, by misappropriating cash receipts from debtors and concealing the same by giving artificial credit to the debtors in the form of bad debts, discounts or sales return, etc. 8, by adopting the method of teaming and lading or lapping process. Under this method, cash received from one debtor is misappropriated and deficiency in that debtor's account is made good when another payment is received from the second debtor by crediting the second debtor's account less by that amount. The process is carried out round the year. 9, by suppressing the cash sales by not recording them or by treating the cash sales as credit sales. 10, by misappropriating the sale proceeds of VPP sales or sales of goods on approval basis by treating the transaction as goods received or not approved. 11, by undercasting receipt side total of the cash book. 12, by receiving fictitious or bogus payments.
Fictitious.
Fictitious.
Mhm.
13, by recording more payments than actual amounts by altering the figures on the vouchers. 14, by showing the same payment twice. 15, by showing credit purchases as cash purchases and misappropriating the amount. 16, recording personal expenses as business expenses. 17, by recording discounts and allowances given by the creditors and misappropriating the amount. 18, by overcasting the payment side of the cash book. 19, recording fictitious and inflated purchases and misappropriating that amount. 20, by suppressing the credit notes for returns and showing the following payment to creditors. 21, by including the names of dummy workers or the workers who have left the job in the wage sheet and misappropriating the amount. 22, by overcasting the total of wages sheets and drawing that account for appropriation.
Yep. Appropriation.
23, by misappropriating the dispersed wages.
Thank you very much, India, for letting me carry you through that whole madness. But
Yes.
the reason why I didn't stop you was because I wanted everybody to move into all the different methods that were available through fraud, through defalcation. And I shall tell you all now, this long list of 23 is not exhaustive. They're just some of the goodies I pulled out. And every day, somewhere, someone or some number of people, hundreds of people, thousands maybe, is executing some form of defalcation of these 23 and scores more. Okay? Remember, defalcation by definition is the misappropriation of cash or goods, meaning doing stuff so you can take possession of it illegally. Okay? Let's not forget the meaning for fraud, willful. Willful meaning intentional. Usually when somebody makes an error, it is not intentional. But when they commit fraud, it is willful and intentional. My. Defalcation, as you can see, has many faces. And scores of examples were given that people do every single day. Look at number 1. Misappropriating the receipt of the company by not recording it in the cash book. So you get the money, you don't record it, no record of the transaction. See? You do that for a month, 6 months, a year. Imagine, even before the auditors come in at the end of the year, somebody has run off with tons and tons of money. And depending on how well they can cover it and what they have possession to in the company and access to, they can wreak even more havoc and defalcate even more assets. Number 2, destroy the carbon copy, see? And take the money. It's my good. Simple as that. And if nobody's aware of that, internally or externally, in terms of the auditors, and they don't check it, pick it up, you may never find it. Enter a lesser amount, keep the difference. Destroy the counterfoil. Not easy to detect unless you get lucky, or you specifically, a client comes in and complains. My. Company sells scrap. Scrap, it could be very, very profitable business. Some companies sell scrap worth thousands and millions of dollars. So you sell some scrap for $10,000. You don't tell anyone. Keep the money. You don't record it. You don't deposit in the bank. Nobody knows you sold it. And if there are no controls in place to monitor the scrap, then you keep the money, and who's the wiser? Collecting cash and failing to record it. See, even in a charitable institution or a church, whatever, fraud happen, defalcations happen anywhere. Anywhere. Potentially by anyone. Some food for thought. Okay, defalcations, taming and lading, taking money from here, putting it over there, keeping the difference, and keep rotating. Who's the better? Who's the wiser? Nobody. Some loan officers in the past were found guilty of preparing loans to themselves. They created fake customers, prepared the loan, had the loan signed off by their supervisor, prepared the check for the loan, kept the money every month, made the loan payment as if it was a customer, when in fact it was the loan officer, him or herself. Until an audit somewhere discovers an impropriety and finds out that the loan officer has been making loans to themselves, keeping the money and keeping the loan payments going as long as they can. The only problem is sometimes you might get sick. Something might happen, you can't make the payment. They start checking to see who owns that loan. And God forbid, you might be discovered. So again, defalcations of all kinds of faces, showing the same payment twice, keeping the money. Oh man, recording personal expenses as business expenses, keep the money, spend the money, and treat it as a business expense, so you don't have to reimburse it. All kinds of amazing things that people come up with. Recording fictitious amounts. Fictitious means an amount that doesn't exist. Recording inflated purchases. So the thing actually is worth 300, you say it's worth 600 and keep the difference. Welcome to the new world of defalcation. I know we all must be aware that these things are happening, some of these things anyway, but to the extent that we have them here, might be an eye-opener for some people. Some of these defalcations you may have never heard about in your life and have no idea even how to execute. And that's good, because you don't want to be involved in these kinds of defalcations anyway. But persons who work for firms long enough, they learn how to do these things. Because the longer we are, the more comfortable we get, the more knowledgeable we are, and therefore we can come up oftentimes with ingenious ways, as you can see here, of defalcating, defrauding the companies that we work for, the churches that we serve, the governments that we are responsible for, and so on. Okay? All right, so that is some food for thought, if I might say so. What about the manipulation of accounts? Well, there's a name in accounting that we have for the manipulation of accounts, and it's called window dressing. Anybody ever heard about window dressing? Anyone? No? Well, in accounting, window dressing means that you are presenting an incorrect picture. Okay? In other words, you might be showing cash in the bank of $750,000 on the balance sheet, but the actual money in the bank is not $750. It might only be $300,000. You just deliberately change it so that the shareholders and auditors, whoever is looking, might think that that is the actual amount in the bank. It's called window dressing. Putting there what's not actually there. Showing there in the financial statement what doesn't actually exist. Showing assets in terms of equipment of $500,000, but in fact, when you do an audit of the equipment, you only find two pieces worth $350. How about that? It's called manipulation of accounts. Notice we are told right in the next paragraph, those who are looking, that generally manipulative or fraud is committed by the people at the, anybody sees it?
Upper management.
Yeah, kiss my foot. The people at the top is where the greatest frauds and the greatest amounts of money commit fraud. Not down the line. The teller may take $10 for gas or lunch for their child or whatever, but the real frauds, the real big money crimes are the ones we call white collar crimes, because they occur at the top of the heap. Unfortunately, where we expect that the best of corporate governance should be practiced, so that everybody else in the firm can be watching to see what the correct thing to do is. Fortunately, we have a couple of guys and girls at the top of the heap in firms and other organizations, charitable, non-charitable, whatever the case might be, who just cannot resist whatever is it, usually money, sometimes other kinds of assets as well. All too often, this happens at the top. Okay? Notice we are told that typically there may not be an involvement of misappropriation of cash or goods, but what do? They mess with the financial statements. They either show some overstatement of profits so that they can fool the shareholders into thinking that the company is doing well and they can get bigger bonuses, see, by overstating the profits, making shareholders think that they can get bigger dividends because profits are significant when in fact those profit numbers are incorrect. Also, to camouflage their failures because they don't want the shareholders to see that instead of profits going up in a particular year, that they actually went down. Because some shareholders, when they see that too regularly, they start getting rid of entire boards. And so sometimes senior management would manipulate this financial statements to satisfy their own personal agendas and to save their butts and to continue to benefit from the gravy train that the organization provides for them. And since these kinds of frauds at the top are committed with very specific objectives, we are told, they become much more difficult to detect because we can hide them far more efficiently and effectively than other types of frauds and defalcations, which is often why they are not They're not easy to detect, and sometimes they are never detected. Some food for thought, and certainly something for audit teams to be thinking about. A lot of times we don't like to think about the senior management being the source of the problem, but any auditor, internal or external, worth their salt will have to give consideration to the possibilities. Because we've seen in recent years all kinds of defalcations and fraud by board members and senior management all the time in the gazillions of dollars. All right. Thank you so much for that, India. Let's see who else can help us. Janelle, are you back? Hell no. Okay, Alexandria, are you there? Alexandria. Okay. Let's see. Gretchen, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, Gretchen. There you are. Doggone it, somebody's still up. I realize it's 9 o'clock already. It's the witching hour already.
Yep.
Yep, trying to get the hell out of this bloody audit class. All right. I won't keep you much longer, I promise. Gretchen, why don't you just say a little bit about the auditors suspecting fraud and under what circumstances that can happen. Okay? And this comes right on the tail end of defalcation and manipulation. In case you guys haven't noticed yet, all of a sudden we run into our very first class, all kinds of stinkiness, correct?
Yeah, but
Right.
there's under what? Fraud through manipulation of accounts we done partially.
We are down to the auditor can suspect fraud under the following circumstances. Right under there. Just a little bit
I'm
down.
trying to use my phone.
It's yes, right underneath the manipulation topic.
Let me see if I can find it back. Let's put my glasses back on.
Well, I feel so much better. I'm not the only one with this bloody.
Expressions of opinion, you say?
Not that one. You see, yeah, page 9.
Yeah, but this number, hold on. So let me go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yes.
Fraud through manipulation of accounts. That's what I see the auditor can.
Okay,
Yeah.
go a little down from there.
The auditor can suspect fraud under the following circumstances.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if these situations exist, then the auditor can say, something fraudulent is going on. All right, and these are some of the key examples. All right.
So you want me to start reading?
Absolutely.
Okay. The auditors can suspect fraud under the following circumstances. 1, when vouchers, invoices, checks, contracts are missing.
Okay, so even before you go on, Gretchen, from very first statement, if you are an internal auditor or a compliance officer or a regulator comes in or the external auditor comes in and they say, can I see the contract for this $3 million deal? And somebody comes with a funny look like, we can't find it. See my point?
I know nobody likes when auditors come.
No. Well, now you see why. Because they start asking for specific things and
Correct.
things get lost, things get misfiled, and things get taken.
And sometimes people just a shortcut things.
Yes, or hide them so that they know the auditors are coming and they're thinking, if I could just destroy it, just like when there's a case in court and somebody's paid off to destroy the evidence in the courthouse. So I'll give you $50,000 if you destroy that evidence. Since some of us cannot resist making money, we even put ourselves in jeopardy by taking a bribe to destroy the evidence. Not unusual. Happens even in the Bahamas. So yeah, contracts are missing. Checks cannot be found. The check number system goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13. So where the hell are the other checks? Nobody knows. Anytime that crap happens, right away, an auditor is going to probably suspect fraud and have a very uneasy feeling about everybody in that flicking firm until they get things sorted out. And they have to have that perspective because that's their work. And if they can't find the fundamental things they asked for, it's lost. Man, are you people kidding me? All right, keep going, Gretchen.
Okay, number 2, when control account does not agree with subsidiary books. When the difference in the trial balance is difficult to locate.
Yes, why? Keep
Number
going.
4, where there are greater fluctuations in gross profit and net profit ratios.
Mhm.
Number 5, where there's a difference between the balance and the confirmation of the balance by the parties.
In other words, when audits are being done, they'll send a letter out to people who owe the company money outside.
I
And
think I
then-
read up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the person will come back and say, "This, hell no, this is not my balance."
Right.
And then, of course, that will prompt the auditor to start checking, which is precisely why they send them out independently, randomly to clients to see what kind of feedback they're going to get. All right, keep going.
Okay, number 6, when there is a difference between the stock as per records and the stock physically counted.
What do you think happened there if there's a difference? The records say X, when you count it's Y. What do you think happened?
Someone
Anyone?
Somebody
Yes,
stole something or they intentionally recorded it incorrectly.
Correct. Yeah,
Or it could be an error.
it could be. No, yeah, let's not forget. It could be an error. So it could be an error, or it could be intentional, or somebody just ran off with it,
Right.
which people do all the time. All right, keep going.
Number 7, when the explanation given by the client is not satisfactory.
Hmm?
Number 8, when there is a overwriting of some figures. Number 9, when there is a contradiction in the explanation given by different parties.
In case you didn't know, for those of you who, I don't know how many of you have been a part of any audits, but when auditors come in, they go to different people specifically in a particular department and ask them the same question to see if the answer is going to be consistent. Excuse me, ma'am, what's the procedure for processing this?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and then they go to somebody else and say, can you tell me please what the procedure is? And oftentimes they get 2 different procedures. And so they flag it to say that there is not consistency in the way a particular procedure is done, okay? Or there's some kind of contradiction that creates some doubt about how things may have been processed. So now they have to go and do more substantive checking by now looking into detail. Now watch this. If for some reason both parties have given the same answer, chances are the auditor would not have gone any further. They would have given them the assurance that everybody's on the same page.
That's
Even
why
though
it's
that,
important to stick to policy and procedures.
correct, that everybody's on the
Same
same
page.
page, that not everybody is doing their own bloody thing. Okay, for sure. All right, keep going.
Okay. So procedures to be followed to detect errors. The following procedures may be adopted by the auditor to detect errors. Number 1, check the opening balances from the balance sheet of the last year. Number 2, check the posting into respective ledger accounts. Number 3, check the total of the subsidiary books. Number 4, verify all the castings and carry forwards.
Does anybody know what castings are?
Not quite
Castings
sure.
are total, like machine type totals. Okay, A lot of times people believe that because something has a machine tape on it, it's correct. Do you know that's not always true? In fact, some people are so smart sometimes, they'll take a machine tape and just put it on something because they know nobody's going to check any further. Did you know that?
Now we know now.
Especially if they want to get away with a particular activity. How about that? People come up with ingenious ways to manipulate the system and run off at assets of the company. You will not believe it. And
That's a
then
job in itself, sound like.
absolutely, absolutely. And so even if you're not an auditor, being aware of these things, let's say you're a supervisor and you're responsible for checking cashiers and checking tellers and checking inventory and checking, see? That now you're not an auditor, but you're acting like one in terms of your job, are you not?
Yeah.
Yes. You might be a manager of something, a manager of some insurance agents who are going out to collect premiums, see? Premiums, cash. And if you don't have a handle on how to check that on a daily basis, folks will find all kinds of ways to get their hands on that money. Because collecting premiums is a very liquid business still. I mean, it's becoming a little more sophisticated now, collecting electronically and all that stuff. So agents don't have the opportunity to walk around with a whole lot of money anymore like they used to. Back in the day, the agents would have tens of thousands of dollars on them on any particular day from premiums collected. Imagine what they can do with that if nobody is
Watching.
Yes. All right, keep going.
Okay, number 5, ensure that the list of debtors and creditors tally with the ledger accounts. Number 6, make sure that all accounts from the ledger are taken into accounts. Number 7, verify the total of the trial balance.
Why do you think that's there? Like, if you look at a trial balance as an auditor and they balance, should you just assume they're in balance?
You
What?
should
Why should you verify the debits and credits?
make sure they're correct.
Yeah, because when you start checking them individually in the trial balance, you might find it doesn't balance. And then your question will be, well, how the hell are you showing it as balance and it doesn't balance? I've double checked it, it doesn't balance. And then all of a sudden everybody give each other what? A funny look again. And then the auditor sees the funny look and says, you know what? There's another flicking problem. First, they couldn't find the missing contracts, now this. See my point? What
Right.
the hell is going on? Kind of thing. They may not use those words, but I use them just for emphasis so you could remember. All right, keep going.
Okay, compare the various items from the trial balance with that of the previous year.
Why? Anyone? Why should you compare for the previous year?
To see if it was any major change.
Indeed, or any change that looks inconsistent or incongruent. Like, so it was 3 million last year, now it's 79 million. What the hell? Like, what happened in that account? Then you start saying, I need to see the details of that account. See my point? So auditors have all kinds of little techniques. And you guys have the good fortune of running into some of the suggestions and techniques that they use. And who knows when you might be able to use it, identify it, make a comment about it, accuse somebody of the board level of some form of defalcation, and live to regret it. But my point is, if that's your job and you find it, what is your responsibility?
Make a note.
Report it.
Yeah, make a note and report. Interestingly enough, a lot of people make notes, but they don't.
But
Report.
that's like report, make a note and report then instead of just saying make a note of it too.
Indeed.
That's what I mean. Okay, so make a note and report.
I know what you meant, but I'm telling you in practice, some people do both and they're not the same. Some people make a note. I knew what you meant. You meant make a note and report. But here's what some people in the real world do. They make a note and don't report. For one reason or another.
They get paid.
Aha. Or they're going to use it as their trump card if somebody tries to mess with them. Then they'll pull them aside and say, I have dirt on you, you bastard. Do what I say or leave me alone. See, like that. That's not the way to do it. When you find it, you're supposed to report it then. But some people don't. They just hold it and wait, God forbid. None of which is the appropriate thing to do. The only appropriate thing to do is when you find it, report it. All right, keep going.
Number 9, find out the amount of difference and see whether an item or half or such amount is entered wrongly. Number 10, check differences involving round figures as dollars, $1,000 or dollars 100.
Yeah,
Mean
round
like a zero-
numbers. Okay,
mean like if a zero is missing off it or something like that.
that might be one reason. Or if all the numbers are round numbers, depending on the business, you're like, why are they all rounded? How come we don't have like $731.53?
Right.
Why is everything thousands of dollars and hundreds of dollars? Why are they all rounded?
That looks shady.
Yeah, given the nature of the business, that could be suspicious by all means. All right, yeah, keep going.
Number 11, see where there is a misplacement or transposition of figures such as 45 for 54, 81 for 18.
Of course.
We transpose figures all the time. You work with figures.
All the time. And you have to be careful with transpositions, and you have to be careful with where you put commas when you're dealing with millions of dollars. See my point?
Correct.
Depending on where you put a comma, that may be 800,000. Or where you put the comma, it might be 800 million or some crap like that. And depending, and if you're doing transfers electronically and all that, and you hit send without making sure that those commas and full stops are in the right place, dog eats somebody's lunch. How about that? Okay. Okay, keep going.
Number 12, careful scrutiny is the only remedy for detection of errors. Number 13, see that no entry of the original book has remained unposted.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Gretchen. And believe it or not, you guys have been more than great tonight for the first session. I was promising to let you go a little bit early on your first night. I promise I shall make it up to you. I don't know how the hell we get into 9:18 and all that crap, but you guys have been wonderful. For next week's session, please go ahead and finish reading Module 1 and then go right into Module 2, because next week when we come back, we'll finish Module 1 and then jump right into Module 2. Remember, use your weekend that's coming up to start reviewing, making notes, however you study. Don't say it's too early. It's never too early to start making preparations. Before you know it, it will be week number 6. And what happens on that week, anyone?
Exams?
Absolutely.
So are you going to send some study tips?
Study 2 said study tips. You mean like what to focus on?
No, on how to prepare.
That's what I mean. For example?
Well, I know you already mentioned earlier about what are the 2 objectives, or, but I mean like you know, like pointers, like to know the how to I'm not prepare, but like you understand?
Yes,
How do you study? How do you study for audit?
I know.
Is it a practice thing or just doing it in time? Okay, when I go to work, I get a task put on my desk 2 days ago. How do I complete this task? Even though I know they have some guidelines.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And audit students ask that question all the time. Stinky, how do you prepare? Because it's not like you can prepare financial statements, use and journal entries and all that stuff. Audit, the best way to prepare for audit is to learn the principles that we discussed. For example, what are the primary and secondary issues? What are examples of defalcation? And so, see my point?
I guess.
Yeah, like that. Learn just learn the key stuff. And if you learn the key stuff well, you should be okay.
I have a question as well.
Yes.
In reference to the test, is it gonna be like a practical test?
Oh, the test is going to be short answer questions, definitions and short answer questions.
All right, so would it be like scenarios of, is this fraud or not? Like, If
There
you get
might, yeah, there might be one or two questions like that, but most of them will be to test your understanding of the basic principles that we discussed. Okay?
all right, and
And
then another thing with the notes, how do we know where module 2 starts?
Oh.
Because
Each module has a specific heading. And the heading will be very clear. For example, module 2, can somebody, let me see if somebody will pick it up. What's the
Audit
heading? for
principle
module?
types.
Yes. And then what would be for module 3?
The
I
purpose,
want
the purpose of the audit plan.
No.
where I want to know where y'all seen this.
Oh,
Okay.
I printed the syllabus thing from there. Hang on.
Oh,
Oh.
you mean the module points that they sent in the email body?
Yeah, that was sent to you today, the study notes.
Oh, I only got the note.
You
No,
didn't
but
get-
I looking at the syllabus actually.
No, not the syllabus.
Okay.
We're following the study notes that we started tonight.
But I see where we ended just now.
Okay, so what's the next hot topic in the module?
Introduction.
Well, the auditors should perform the following duties in respect to a fraud and advantage of inherent limitations of audit.
Oh, okay. Now, we're still on module 1, which is the introduction, correct?
Mhm.
Now,
Limitations in audit and inherent liabilities.
uh,
Okay.
where
Oh,
does,
audit fundamentals, principles, types, and errors, and frauds. Is 2.
yes, that would be module 2. And what would be module 3?
Module 3 would
Ain't no nothing.
Yes,
accounting concepts relevant to auditing.
no,
No, little further down. Auditing planning.
yes. They're all in bold at the top.
It's gotta get-
Okay, what about this piece up here would say advantages and adherent limitations of audit? That's it, still in module 1?
Yes, that's a subtitle.
Yeah, that's just a subtitle.
Right. I see that.
What I will do for you, I will send you an email with the main topics for each module, so you'll be very clear.
Thank you.
Okay, if that will help at all, I'll send it. Now, if today is what, Thursday? So I'll send it sometime between now and the weekend. If you don't see it by Saturday, somebody send me a note like, hello, topics. By then you may have discovered it yourself, but I'll send it nevertheless so that you can be sure and clear of what the topic.
So for next class, we have to have already read module 1 and begin reading module 2.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
And then you say the structure of the examination is just short answer questions. What are they worth?
What are they worth?
Like how much of the questions were like, because with my last class that I took with Biff, she told us that we'll get so and so much multiple choice and then we'll get 5 essay questions. So I had to kind of like, I was able to mentally prepare on how I needed to structure my answers and stuff. So these short answer questions just worth like what, 2 points? Or
Depending on the question, it can be worth between 2 and 5 points. So all you really need to do is answer the question that is raised, and depending, sometimes it's 2 points depending on the response, maybe 3 points, maybe 4 points, but usually between 1 and 5 points per question. There will be no essay
Okay,
questions, okay? Just multiples, just short answer questions that can be worth between 1 and 5 points, and then definitions, which will be worth 1 point each. Okay, and the definitions are going to be very clear definitions that you ought to know. Okay, like what is fraud? See my point? Whoever gets that wrong should like run into a wall or something. It'll be something as clear as that for definition, stuff you ought to know. And then the short answer questions will go into some of the nitty-gritty stuff that you have to review and put in perspective, like secondary and primary objectives, what are they things like that. What are examples of defalcation? Okay. And so,
Also, what platform are we using to take the exam on? Or how is it gonna be done? In person or?
I shall advise you of that perhaps by next week. I need to check with Miguel and company to see what platform they plan to use this semester,
Mhm.
because I know that there's been a hybrid situation in recent months. Sometimes it's done virtually, sometimes it's done in class. So I'll check with Miguel and company on that, and I'll confirm that for you next week. If you don't hear me say anything, please raise it again so I can get that information to you. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Any other questions before we hit the road?
I have one.
Yes.
You say when we get in the, what are we supposed to get? A case assignment?
Next week.
Okay,
Yeah. Or depending what's happening, I might email it this weekend. One or the other.
please do.
Okay?
This
Don't
week.
worry. Don't worry. Don't forget you have 12 weeks. You do want to give yourself a couple of weeks to get information and all that stuff before you get into the case. So you do have a little time to read it at your leisure. And I suspect that's what you mean. Get comfortable with it and start thinking about it.
Yeah, we didn't start panicking.
Yeah, don't panic yet. This is only the first week, the first class. No need to panic at all. All right? Just kind of stay on top of your reading, stay on top of your reviews. We use whatever review study method you use that's good for you. And as long as you stay ahead of the game, everybody should be fine. Don't get too far behind thinking I'll catch up when I catch up. That could get stinky. Okay? And besides, then all other kinds of crap starts to happen at work, at home, this thing, the other thing, and then things get a little stinky. And then you have to really play catch up. So try to stay ahead of the game while you're ahead of the game, so that if any contingency comes up, you'll be able to deal with it without pulling every piece of hair off your head. All right, so if there are no other questions, you guys have a great and safe week. Remember, COVID is still here. Cases are rising. The US has put a thing on us again for some strange reason. Just be careful out there, and I shall see you guys next week. If you think of anything you need to ask me and it cannot wait until next week, please send me a text or an email, and I'll be happy to respond. Okay?
Okay,
Good
All
night.
right.
good night, everybody.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody. Take care.